Welcome to the Industrial Commissioning Association podcast. My name is Paul Turner, and in today's episode, we're going to review the differences between building commissioning processes and the industrial commissioning processes. Now, these two processes are very similar, but there are some distinct differences that you need to be aware of. There's historically been lots of support for building commissioning. There's lots of associations and certifications and resources out there to support the building commissioning industry, and these organizations are all doing great work. And it makes sense that there's lots of support for building commissioning because this is the most common type of commissioning that you'll see out there. There's lots of buildings that have HVAC and fire protection and security systems that all need commissioning. And if you walk down any city block, you're certainly going to see a lot more buildings than you are an oil well platform or a power substation, right? So it makes sense that there's lots of support for the building commissioning industry. But there's still a lot of industrial mega projects that are being built behind the scenes that you don't see, where commissioning is extremely important and extremely complex, such as a water treatment plant, a wastewater treatment plant, energy production, manufacturing, or any type of industrial plant process or energy system. And while there's been lots of support for building commissioning, there has never really been many resources or any associations to support the success of commissioning of these industrial projects. And that's the reason we created the Industrial Commissioning Association, is to help these industrial plant process and energy systems succeed with commissioning by providing resources, commissioning standards, procurement standards, and lots of other specialized resources needed to commission these complex projects. So let's review the differences between building commissioning and industrial process and energy system commissioning. And there's four main differences to be aware of between these two different commissioning processes. The first one is subsystems versus systems. In building commissioning, a lot of the subsystems are somewhat standalone, right? Your HVAC system may have a little bit of interconnection with some systems, but largely it will stand alone. Similar to your sprinkler system and your lighting control system, any of the life safety systems that are required to achieve your building occupancy permit, a lot of these systems kind of work on their own. Maybe they have a few interconnections between your HVAC system and your smoke management system, but for the most part, they largely work independent. Now, in the case of industrial plant process commissioning, it's really the opposite, is everything has to work together. All of your electrical systems, all of your mechanical systems, all of your automation systems, all of this equipment needs to come together and function as one plant process to generate the intended outcome of the project. So take a water treatment plant, for example. Water comes in one end of the plant, and then we need electrical systems, we need mechanical systems, and we need automation systems to control all the pipes, pumps, valves, flow meters, instrumentation, everything that is required in order to treat that water and produce potable water for people to drink out the other end of the plant. Everything's got to work together as one system plant process. Now, there are building systems that are involved in industrial plants. For example, if we've got a building, we need to heat and cool that building. It may have a security system as well. In the case of industrial plant process systems, all of these building systems would be referred to as the balance of plant. So all your air, oil, water systems, your lighting control, fire protection systems, and heating and cooling of the building, that would all be referred to as the balance of plant. Those systems need to be functional, but they're really the support systems for the industrial plant process, which is your water treatment system within the building. The second main difference is the contract structures that are required for these two types of projects. When you get into industrial plant process systems, the contracts can get quite elaborate in what's required to define the transition from construction groups to commissioning groups. This sequence of transitions for not only electrical, mechanical, and automation components of your projects, but that handover transition at a subsystem and system level as you build up your entire plant process. The contract structures for these complex projects can get quite involved to prepare these procurement packages to select contractors to work on these projects to ensure that they have the necessary skill sets and expertise for this complex level of commissioning. The third difference to be aware of, and we touched on this a little bit earlier when we talked about subsystems and systems, but the third aspect to be aware of for differences is the interdependencies. An example in an industrial plant would be, say for example, there's an air compressor system that's part of the overall plant process. The vendor would be responsible to start up that particular compressor, but they're not necessarily concerned about any of the equipment that's connected to that compressor. That's the commissioning team's role to commission everything outside of that. Again, say there's a chiller or a heat exchanger. These items would be the responsibility of the vendor to start up, but all of these systems need to interface with other systems and subsystems to form that single plant process. So while there are vendor startups part of industrial commissioning, there's still that larger overarching role by the project commissioning team to ensure that all of these subsystems are interconnected, working together, and function as one plant process. So all the pipes, pumps, motors, valves, instrumentation, interconnection to automation systems, all of this individual items are interdependent on other items to form one functional plant process for industrial commissioning. And then the fourth aspect to be aware of, one of the main differences, and maybe this is the biggest one, is the operational element that exists in an industrial plant process. While both building commissioning and industrial commissioning have a certain level of maintenance to maintain the functionality of the equipment, there's a much larger operational element in an industrial plant. A lot of these industrial plants will have on-site operators in a central control room that will operate the equipment during the day, potentially have 24/7 coverage to operate and maintain the equipment, monitor the operation of everything. And there's quite a significant effort as part of commissioning and as part of operational readiness to support this smooth handover from the project to the operating team, so that on day one that the plant systems go into service, the operational team is ready, prepared, they have the documentation, they have all the training that they need so that they're ready to operate the new facilities on day one when the systems are placed into commercial service. So there's a much bigger operational element in industrial plant processes than in building systems that needs a dedicated focus to make sure that the plant is ready for operation on day one when it goes in service. So these are the four main differences between building commissioning and industrial plant process commissioning. There's more differences as well, but these are the four biggest ones to focus on when making the distinction between building commissioning and industrial plant process commissioning. And we've got lots of resources at the Industrial Commissioning Association to help you with your industrial plant process commissioning. I hope to see you within the members area, and please consider subscribing to this podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.